Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Whom It May Concerns Hood Professionals. Once again, I am your hostess, AP, and I don't want to say sadly because it's a great thing. This is the last episode of 2020, and I know you're like, child, you have been a little incognito for some months, and we discussed it on the last podcast, so I'm going to need you to do your homework and go back and listen to the last podcast. This podcast is going to be shorter than our previous ones. Number one, it's just me. And as much as people like to compliment me on my voice, I'm really not trying to talk for 30 minutes straight. I'm just not trying to do it because I like to always go back and listen to my podcast before, do my editing and before I post them for your listening pleasure. I'm really not trying to hear my voice for 30 minutes. This isn't that isn't this. So we're just going to do a little recap. Once again, I like to be as transparent and honest with you all because you are my listeners and you are taking time out of your day, your schedule, your lives to tune in to the podcast. And for that, I want to make sure that we stay connected and that we're honest here. We started out back in February with this. We started out with toxicity in the workplace, and that has to be one of my personal favorite episodes. I got to do that with someone who I consider to be one of my best friends, and the fact that she took that journey with me to believe enough in what I was starting here and to sit down and to do the very first podcast episode was great. Just some recap from that. We talked about at least we had like 13 different signals or signs of a toxic workplace. Number one, poor communication. 2, no one's in a good mood. Rumors flying. 4, experiencing verbal abuse. 5, a high turnover rate. 6, your boss sucks. 7, people take credit for work they didn't do. 8, colleagues don't pull their weight. 9, people play the blame game. 10, you're always working, like always. 11, it's clicked up. Ain't nobody with my click. 12, culture of sexual harassment. And 13, culture of discrimination. That was a pretty hilarious and also serious episode, mainly because I was in a toxic ass workplace and I was not feeling it at all. And luckily for me, I was able to transition out of that. But one of the things that I took from that experience was that just because I'm in a toxic workplace doesn't mean that every single day is a terrible day. Thankfully, I was able to find a little piece of my tribe there, that we are still in communication, still in contact with one another to this day. It taught me how even when you're in the trenches in your professional life, you can still seek out the good in everything while working your way up out of it, whether you choose to stay. And you find your sweet spots here and there, because every day isn't going to be ice cream and sprinkles with a cherry on top, period. That's life. But if you are someone who is committed to positivity, committed to your happiness, committed to good mental health and self-care, there are ways for you to be able to survive in that and even flourish. Honestly, there are ways. You figure it out. You learn the game. You survey what is the playing field, what is the work environment. You get what I'm saying? One thing that I strived to convey to my previous coworkers, new ones coming in who were coming into that workplace, when you're coming into a toxic workplace and it's trickling down from the head of it, the worst thing you can do is to show your hand. If you are someone who is gunning and appreciates recognition, who needs that, that validation, the worst thing you can do is show your hand. Always deliver on what is expected of you. When a task is presented in front of you, do the task and do it well. Do it to the best of your ability. You know that you're a great worker. You know what you bring to the table. Put that into that. And that is how you win over to be able to have the flexibility, to have a little bit of leeway. Those are the things that you focus on. And hopefully with that, you gain some type of leeway. And even if you don't, the importance is that you make sure that you document all of your accomplishments, all the projects that you take on and you complete successfully. Everything that you've been asked to do, whether it's to train, whether it's to do, when you have new hires come on, showing them the ropes, document those things. So there are things that you can take away even from a toxic workplace, but always know validation in those certain type of circumstances or situations is like null and void. That is not a place where you want to show that you are someone who appreciates words of appreciation. Your love language is not going to work in that type of a workplace. That is something that that definitely comes to mind from that I learned from that, and it made me a better person to say, you know what, I don't need validation, and you really don't, because at the end of the day, it's business, and you're there to be able to provide for yourself, and if you have a family, for your family. The goal is to make it home whole. Whether that's making it home you going home to yourself, to your pets, to a significant other, to your children. You need to be healthy, mind, body, and spirit once you leave that place and go home and be able to leave that shit where it belongs, and that is there in their office. Turn it off, go home, and be able to be the you that you need to be. Our next episode, and if you hear papers turning, that's just me going through my notes. Yes, I am that person. I keep notes. This is what I do. This doesn't just come off the top of the dome. I know I can have these conversational pieces, and it seems like I'm just, putting these things together, but that's just the skill set that we're in. Our next episode was relationships in the workplace. A little bit of shade, where we were talking about unique interpersonal relationships with important implications for the individuals in those relationships and the organizations in which they exist and develop. And we talked about how workplace relationships directly affect a worker's ability and drive to succeed. I'm just going to say, don't do it. If it's not on a genuine level, if it's on some lust type shit, leave that where it's at. If you're not connecting with someone and you want to see this thing be long term, just leave it alone, because it's not necessary. That's on a romantic tip. Friendship wise, for me, I am not someone who likes to call my coworker a friend while we're still working. It takes a lot for me to be like, you are my friend while we're still working at the same establishment. I'm just not, I don't like it. I don't like it. And I know it might seem like, well, why? What's the big deal? Because it can get messy and it can become complicated, especially if you're in a competitive workplace and that type of thing is encouraged, and you are someone who is very strong-willed and determined, and you want to succeed, and you are driven by success. I just feel like sometimes it can cause conflict. It really can. So most of my friendships with previous coworkers come to full blossom once we are no longer working together. That's just been a mantra of mine. I was doing the 10 commandments of, the 90-day commandments of when you're first coming on. not telling people all your business. Stop being so personal so soon. You know, that 90 days is just like a trial period when you're dating someone and getting to know them. Not too much too soon. Now, if the vibe feels right and this person is showing you they can be trustworthy, because I feel like your gut and your intuition is always something to be leaned upon and trusted. So if it feels right in the head and the stomach, I say go for it. But if you're seeing some red flags, trust it, because people show you who they are, and you have a vantage point of spending 8 hours out of the day with these people to see, you know what I mean, to pretty much see some true colors in them, because we can only pretend for so long. You can only put on for so long, and you're gonna see who people are. So I would just say, just ease into any type of relationship that you're having, because friendships are just as important in the workplace as romantic relationships. You have to be careful of who you're divulging information to, what you're doing around certain people, especially if you know you are slacking and skimping on certain things. You know what you're doing. You know how some of us like to take shortcuts when we start getting lazy. You have to be mindful of those things, because those are things that can come back and bite you in the anus. Okay? So you want to make sure that, did I really want to say it? Oh, I said it. So you want to make sure that there is a level of loyalty there before you just start, tricking off or divulging your personal information. Because, honey, people love entertainment, and I always find it's best for you to have a little mystery. And if you're gonna have conversations with coworkers, keep it on the job surface. Like let the serious conversations be job related, and you know what I mean, until you get past your 90 days, then you can kind of see where people are at. You can kind of see if things that you said you're hearing them coming out of other people's mouths. You get what I'm saying? So that would be my definitely my tip on reviewing that, just to make sure you keep it job related until you get to a point where it's okay to start talking about and sharing your personal life with other people. Okay? Period. I'm just here to tell it. Our next episode was talking about the process of like the recruitment process when you're in that transitional period, transitioning from one job to the next. That was a very insightful conversation that I had with two professionals. One who is a recruiter, so he knows the game and knows what's going on behind the scenes, and then also a good girlfriend of mine who I've known since college. She talking about her being in the position of hiring, so being able to come from that perspective. And there were a lot of things that I took from that. And the most important thing I took from that is being fearless, but also showing restraint. Being fearless in that you are confident in your experiences that you have. You're confident in your abilities to get the job done, and you're confident in, however, maybe your previous job descriptions don't exactly say what this job is. However, you've been able, you know that you're skilled enough, and you've researched enough, and you're savvy enough to see that there are transferable skills from what's on your resume to what is being asked of this particular position. And just being fearless in that aspect, but also showing restraint and just not being desperate. Don't overdo it with the communication. If you see a likeness or commonality with someone, then okay, cool. Let's, that then there's a start. There's something to connect on there. But just don't do unnecessary reaching out, unnecessary contact. Because the truth of the matter is, and this is actually something that Brandon and I spoke in last month's podcast with the intimidation of job hunting episode, these people, recruiters, hiring managers, they still have a job to do outside of interviewing and reviewing applications. So it's unfair for us to feel like, well, this is all they're doing. That's not all they're doing. That's a part of the job. So I feel like when we step outside of our need to want to move on to the next thing and really start to think logically, we'll see and understand that there are other factors that have to deal with the timeline and us developing that patience and that restraint not to overkill with communication. I myself have been an offender and a peak offender. So I'm speaking from a place of love and transparency, like being fearless, but also being able to couple that with restraint, right? And then our last episode, which probably too was one of my favorite episodes, the intimidation of job hunting. Brandon of ES Consulting Agency, we spoke about, and as you see, I'm reading back through my notes. We spoke about the importance of having a great resume, which is important, and what is like the new, because resumes are constantly changing, and I know how frustrating they can be, but just the patience that it takes when we are transferring from one job to the next, and how frustrating it can be when you are looking for new employment, especially during this year. 2020 brought about a lot of unexpectancies for a lot of us, and we had to evolve and adapt and overcome. And this should have been a time where it showed us where we need to be more diligent in updating our resume. And I know Brandon was saying if your job isn't really changing that much, then maybe once a quarter. But if your job is changing, or maybe he said that if things are changing consistently, then it's once a quarter. Then if not, maybe twice a year, you're looking at your resume and seeing what needs to be updated. So again, please support ES Consulting Agency with Brandon King. He helps to write resumes, cover letters, helps to do mock interviews, and really helps to talk you through the process of how you're trying to get yourself prepared. He even helps you. I think he even acts as like a headhunter with finding work in your area where you are. So definitely give him a heads up. He is on Facebook and also on Instagram, again at ES Consulting Agency. So that part wraps up our recap on the podcast. And this last part, I really just want to get into giving you some encouragement about the new year and what to expect in 2021 from Who It May Concern's Hood Professionals. In this new year that is fast approaching in like a week and a day, I really want myself and you all to become more intentional and more purposeful on what you want for yourself, what you see yourself obtaining, and being more prepared mentally rather than reacting. 2020 definitely showed a lot of our slips. It definitely showed us where we were not prepared, whether that was losing your job whether that was things changing, us getting stuck into a routine, us not being able to be flexible, us not being willing to adapt, being resistant to change. Although everyone says, oh yes, I'm flexible, I'm adaptable, like that's all the things that you say in your interview, right? Well, some of us, not so much. Whether it was now you have to work from home, now you have to commute in a time where it's a whole pandemic going on, not being confident enough to have those hard conversations with your higher ups or your superior in the workplace, just things that we needed to work on. Where you see yourself falling short, now more than ever, I feel like there needs to be a vision board. And for me, I've broken, shout out to Issa Rae, I've broken mine down into 3 parts: professional, personal, and then miscellaneous things. And then and rather than calling it a miscellaneous column, mine are long-term goals. Things that no matter what's going on, these are things that I am going to commit myself working towards. I feel like with the vision board and having it in a prominent spot in your home or even in your office, wherever you want to put it, it forces you to commit to the things that you say that you want for yourself. Because when we think about it, on these jobs, we're signing these contracts and these things to say that we're willing to meet the expectations of this job and to follow through and to execute them to the best of our abilities for someone else's vision. We need to be able to have, if not the same, more of a commitment to the vision that we have for ourselves. And if we don't create a vision for ourselves, how do we know what we want? Yeah, we can say things out of our mouths, but the power of manifestation really starts with you visualizing it, thinking it, speaking it, but most definitely writing it down, whether you're drawing it out, however that looks like to you, because you begin to practice. When you see that vision board before you leave the house or when you wake up, it sets it in place that you will subconsciously seek those things out in your day. And then you will find yourself in situations where you're like, is this conducive to the lifestyle, to the vision that I have for myself? Just like at work, you're not going to do something that is counterproductive to the goal, to the project. You're not going to drag your feet. Well, maybe sometimes you will, but with a deadline. But it's just like when you're in college or when you have a test coming up and you're trying to cram, you still want to do your best, right? Even if it's at the last minute, but you should want that same vigor and passion and due diligence and urgency for things that you want to create and see for yourself. So that is my challenge that I've posed to some of my closest friends, to create a vision board. I know it's nothing new. I know people do vision board parties all the time. And so please don't think that I'm feeling like I'm just creating something new. But I honestly feel like 2020, for it to be a synonymous and symbolism for clear vision, I think a lot of us were blinded. And although we said that there were a lot of things that 2020 halted, 2020 for me showed me that my vision for myself, you better get clear on that thing. Because if not, you're going to spiral and you're always going to be grappling for assistance, for help, how to fix it, how to get back on track. And so being able to establish something and set something up in place that is going to help me no matter what comes around, I know that I have something to go to. I know that I was already working towards something. It's only going to push me to, to go harder and do better. So I do challenge you to do a vision board, and it doesn't have to be 3 parts. It can be as little as one major goal or 500 on that board. It's you. It's your vision. It's your vision. Really sit down and think about the sectors in your life that you want to focus on, and put those things on there, because it is possible to manifest every single thing we think and we want and we desire. We just have to be disciplined and faithful and consistent with the process. Patience is definitely key, but that doesn't mean you don't have to do anything and you just sit around. No, you still have to put the work in to bring forth the things that you desire. I hope that you all will take time out to also connect with me on my blog, which is Hey Girl Hey, and that's HeyYyGurl Hey's Hey Girl Hey. I'm on WordPress at Hey Girl Hey, spelled the same way, .wordpress.com. I'm also on Facebook at Hey Girl Hey. I have an Instagram page, but it's lacking a little bit. I won't lie. It's lacking a little bit. But I am so thankful, so grateful, and so humble for the listenership that I've had for 4 episodes. And I say to myself, if you were to commit yourself to being consistent every single month next year, imagine how much more listenership you could drum up. So for me, that is also going on my vision board, and that is something that I want you all to ask yourself about, some of the things that you have done inconsistently, and you've been pretty successful with it. You've had some great feedback, but imagine if you were to commit yourself to being consistent in that thing. Imagine just how much further along you could be with it. As always, I wish you great success, great health, great mental health, wealth, love, peace, and may the days ahead be greater than those behind us. Remember, be intentional, be purposeful, and I hope to see, and I hope for you to hear me in 2021. Till next time, peace.